When you deliver mail for 42 years, you learn to stop looking too closely at what's inside the envelopes. Names, return addresses, little scribbles in the margins. You learn to ignore them. It's none of your business. You just get the mail where it's going and keep your head down. I retired from the U.S. Postal Service in 2006. I served every route in our county at some point: valleys, farms, trailer parks, the fancy lakeside cabins, even the P.O. boxes out by the state road where nobody really wants to admit they still live. I liked the job, liked the rhythm of it. It gave me space to think, gave me time to forget. But last fall, something strange happened. I got a letter addressed to my brother, which wouldn't be so odd, except for the fact that my brother, Daniel Harper, has been dead since 1971. The letter was plain. No return address, no stamp, just his name in neat blue cursive and my home address. I thought maybe it was a joke or some junk mail scam targeting next of kin. I almost threw it out. But then I noticed the handwriting. It looked familiar, like something I'd seen as a kid. The loops, the careful spacing, the little way the H in Harper curved under itself. I opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper, yellowed slightly like it had been sitting somewhere for a while. Typed, not handwritten. No greeting, no signature. Just one sentence. He never made it to Laos. That was it. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the paper for what must have been an hour. My wife thought I was having another dizzy spell. Daniel had been declared MIA during a classified operation in Laos in '71. It was never confirmed publicly. Just a few official words delivered to my parents by a soldier with 2 clean boots and a file folder he wasn't allowed to leave behind. I was 16 at the time. Daniel was 21. My parents never recovered. And now, 52 years later, someone was sending me cryptic messages, and they knew enough to use my home address. I did what any old mailman would do. I flipped the envelope over, held it up to the light, checked for watermarks, UV, ink, anything unusual. But it was clean. No stamp, no barcode, no postmark. Which meant one thing: it was hand-delivered. That got under my skin more than the message itself. I live off Route 17, on 5 acres of backwoods pine. We've got a long gravel drive, motion sensor lights, and a dog that barks at moths. I didn't see or hear a damn thing. I kept the letter, put it in a file drawer next to my tax records, like I didn't want it touching the rest of my life. The next 2 weeks, nothing came. I started to think maybe it had been a fluke, a prank. Maybe one of the guys at the Legion Hall found some old records and thought it'd be funny to screw with me. But then the second envelope arrived. Same handwriting, same lack of postage. Just Daniel Harper on the front and my address again. This time, the paper inside read, "He wasn't on the chopper manifest." I felt the hairs on my arms go up. I sat there for a while, trying to remember the name of the operation. Daniel had been in Army intelligence, something hush-hush near the end. I'd heard whispers about Cambodia, Laos, even parts of northern Thailand. But it was all buried under Cold War secrecy. I started digging through the old storage chest in the attic. Found the Department of the Army telegram, still folded, still crisp after all these years. Missing in action near Salavan, Laos, presumed dead. I stared at that word, presumed, not confirmed, not identified, just presumed. The next day, I called an old friend, Bill Strasser, who'd been in recon during the same years. He'd served in Da Nang. We hadn't talked in years, but he picked up on the second ring. I asked him if he'd ever heard of someone forging disappearance reports. He got quiet, then said, "You don't want to go down that road, Harp? What if someone's already on it?" He didn't answer for a long time, then said, "If you start getting envelopes from Pennsylvania, burn them," and hung up. The third envelope arrived the following Sunday. Same handwriting, same blue ink. No stamp, no postmark, no smudge. It was sitting on my porch chair like someone had hand-placed it right where I take my coffee in the mornings. But this time, something had changed. On the back flap was a tiny symbol, a small triangle drawn in pencil, barely visible, and inside was more than just one sentence. The paper was still yellowed, but this time it had 2 lines. One typed, one handwritten underneath it. The typed line said, "He was with Captain Lowell Caro before the Hilltop extraction." And the handwritten note, in cursive, "Look into Operation Reedgrass." Lowell Caro. I hadn't heard that name since I was a teenager. He'd served in the same unit as my brother, Intel out of Savannakhet. My dad used to say, if something happened to Danny, Caro either saw it or caused it. After the war, Caro disappeared from public life. No interviews, no statements. His name wasn't in the local paper's military roster when they did their 4th of July Veterans feature. He just vanished. But now here it was, on my porch, in my hands. I looked up Operation Reedgrass. Took me most of the night on a spotty laptop connection and a couple old FOIA leak forums. It wasn't an official op, at least not one the government admits ever happened. But there were mentions. Reedgrass was rumored to be a covert extraction mission near the Laotian border in August '71, about a week before my brother's MIA notice. Some posts said it went south, that a recon team was sent in to recover 2 assets. But only one came back. No names, just dates. One entry buried in a long-deleted Veterans Forum archive listed a quote from an anonymous source. Reedgrass was never about rescue. It was about cleanup. That word made my stomach turn. Cleanup. I sat there, the letter trembling slightly in my hand, and realized something terrifying. Someone knew exactly where to find me. Someone was feeding me details about a Black Ops mission buried by 5 decades of dust. And someone wanted me to find out what really happened to my brother. That Wednesday, I was sitting in the corner booth at Millie's Cafe, where I've had breakfast every Wednesday for the last 20 years, when I noticed a man walk in who didn't belong. Now, I'm not saying that like an old-timer complaining about outsiders. I mean it practically. In a town like ours, you notice new people the same way you notice a strange car in your driveway. It's instinct. He was maybe late 60s, dark gray jacket, bald cap with a worn VA emblem on it. Military issue. Walked with a slight limp, sat at the counter and didn't order anything. Just asked for water and stared at the menu for a long time. I noticed he kept glancing at me. I was about to leave when he stood up and walked over, slow and careful, like he was checking every step for landmines. "You Harper?" he asked. I nodded. "Daniel's brother?" Now that caught my attention. I asked him who he was. He didn't answer at first. Just sat down across from me and pulled out his wallet. Slid a card across the table. No name on it. Just a faded military ID number and the insignia for U.S. Army Intelligence, Vietnam era. "My name was never the kind you write down," he said. "But I knew your brother." He didn't say served with. He said knew. Then he said, "He didn't die in Laos." I sat back. Let him talk. He told me Daniel had gotten himself involved in something deep. Deep enough that when Reedgrass went sideways, command made a decision. Daniel had seen something. Something he wasn't supposed to. "They didn't want him dead," the man said. "They just didn't want him back." I asked where he was now. The man hesitated. "Dead. Long time ago. But not in '71. He made it out. Lived under another name for about 7 years. Montana, small town. I visited him once. He was tired. I asked why no one told us. Because he made a deal. No contact, no trail. He agreed to disappear. He slid another envelope across the table. This one already opened. Inside, a black and white photo. Grainy. But it was him. Older, beard, thinner. But it was Daniel. And beside him, a little girl. His daughter, I guessed. My niece. "I've been sending you letters," the man said. "Trying to ease you into it." "Why now?" I asked. He looked out the window. "Because I'm dying. And some debts can't follow you." We sat in silence for a long time after he said that. The man didn't fidget, didn't blink much, just stared into his water like it might wash down 50 years of secrets. Then he pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket. Yellowed, like everything else. Lined, torn at the edges. A map, rough sketch, county lines, rivers, a few dots for towns. He tapped one with a thick finger. "Choteau, Montana." "That's where he ended up?" I asked. "For a while." "What happened?" The man paused, like the words had to climb their way out of his chest. "They let him live on 2 conditions. 1, no contact with family, ever. 2, if he talked, he was fair game." I stared at the map. "Who's they?" "You don't want the full list," he said. "But I'll tell you who gave the order. Lowell Caro, that name again." "Daniel trusted him," I said. The man nodded. "That's how they got him." He explained that Caro had lured Daniels into reedgrass under the pretense of rescuing a downed pilot. But the shop wasn't about rescue. It was cleanup. There was evidence, photographs, tape, maybe even a ledger that showed unauthorized operations across the border. Illegals, executions, bribes. Daniel had seen it, maybe even helped catalog it. And that made him a liability. "They couldn't kill him outright," the man said. "He was too visible. Too many people would have asked questions. So they cut a deal. Gave him a new life. Put a leash on him." I asked what happened after that. "He went dark, off the grid in '78. Some say he ran. Some say they found him." I asked the question I'd been avoiding since the start. Was he still alive when they told us he was dead? The man looked at me. "Yes." My throat tightened. All those years. My mom, my dad. They thought he was gone. "I know." "Did he know where we were?" "Yes." "And he never reached out?" "He wrote letters," the man said. "I don't think they ever got sent. I don't think he was allowed." Then he added something that stuck in my spine. "But I think he left something behind." He pointed to a spot on the map, just north of Choteau, in the foothills. A cabin. He used to talk about it like a journal with walls. If anything still exists, it's there. I looked up. The man was already standing. He left the map on the table, nodded once, and walked out. Didn't leave a number, didn't say goodbye. I told my wife I was going fishing. That wasn't a total lie. I did pack my rods. But the real reason I drove 1,200 miles north through Nebraska, Wyoming, and into Montana had nothing to do with trout. I followed the man's hand-drawn map the old-fashioned way. No GPS. Just road signs, a tattered Rand McNally atlas, and the kind of instinct you get from delivering mail to rural America for 4 decades. Choteau was like a lot of towns I've known. Grain silos, a diner that closes at 2 p.m. sharp, veterans on porches, kids playing basketball on gravel. I stayed at a roadside lodge, told the owner I was tracing family history. "Lots of folks say that around here," she said. "You sure it's not UFOs?" She was half joking, but I didn't laugh. The next morning, I hiked out into the hills. parked where the trail turned to dirt, and walked the rest of the way with just the map and my gut. About 3 hours in, I found the cabin. It looked exactly how I imagined. Small, single-room structure with a tin roof and a front porch that leaned like an old man listening too closely. There was no lock on the door, just a rope nailed to one side and hooked over a rusty nail. Inside, a wood stove, a cot, a table, a chair. And on the table, a metal box, old army issue, green, scuffed. The latch was busted, but it opened with a hard tug. Inside, notebooks. 6 of them, all labeled in Daniel's handwriting. I'd know it anywhere. Nitin Sitatri, Nitin Sitafire. Each filled with tight cursive, line after line of daily thoughts, fragments, reflections. Some entries read like a soldier still trying to process what he saw. Others were full of fear, not of war, but of being watched, of being silenced. And one name appeared over and over. Caro, the last notebook, 1978, was the thinnest. Only a few entries. One stood out, written just weeks before the entries stopped completely. If they find me, they'll take it all. But if someone I trust reads this someday, I never stopped being your brother. My hand shook. I looked around the cabin, half expecting someone to be outside. But the woods were silent. Still. That night, back at the lodge, I copied one of the entries word for word. Then I packed the notebooks, wrapped them in a trash bag, and buried them under my spare tire. If someone tried to take my truck, they wouldn't get them without tools and time. I didn't sleep. In the morning, there was a note under my windshield wiper. You're not the only one looking. I left Chateau before sunrise. Didn't check out. Didn't stop for coffee. Just tossed my bag in the truck and drove south like the devil himself might show up asking questions. The note under the windshield, "You're not the only one looking," was written in the same handwriting as the earlier envelopes. Blue ink, neat loops, same pressure, same pen even. Whoever had been feeding me clues wasn't finished. But that meant someone else out there knew about the cabin, about the notebooks, about Daniel. And I wasn't sure they were on my side. 2 hours into the drive, my rearview mirror caught a beige Chevy Caprice riding my tail a little too long. Every time I changed lanes, it did too. No front plates, tinted windows. I took an unmarked gravel road near Great Falls and waited. They didn't follow. But by then, I'd already decided. I wasn't going home with the notebooks. Not yet. Instead, I mailed them. Split across 2 separate packages, sent from 2 different towns. One to a retired Army archivist I knew down in Arizona. The other to an old contact from the Legion Hall in Michigan who once told me, "If you ever find something the government wants to stay buried, send it to me first." Then I made one more stop. I called Morgan Green. You remember her from the story about Jesse? The journalist who came sniffing around a few years ago? She gave me her card and said, "If you ever want to tell your story." Well, now I did. She picked up on the first ring. I told her everything, from the first envelope to the cabin. She listened without interrupting, then asked only one question. "Can I come see you?" I said yes, and she was on a plane that night. When she arrived 2 days later, I met her with a pot of coffee and a box of fresh cinnamon rolls from the Mennonite bakery. She looked tired, but focused. She had brought a scanner, a recorder, and a yellow legal pad already half-filled. We spent the next 12 hours going page by page through Daniel's journals. Copies. I wasn't dumb enough to bring the originals back across state lines. Some of it was redacted by time, blurry memories, half-coded references. But names came up. Dates, orders, and that same triangle symbol from the envelope flap appeared in the margins of 4 different entries. When she saw it, she froze. "Where did you say this was found again?" she asked. I told her. She pulled out her own file folder. Inside, she had a copy of a 1973 Army memo, classified at the time but leaked years later, about an off-the-books unit called Project Hollow Bend. Their insignia? A triangle. Morgan stayed 3 days. We combed through every journal, every reference, every coded phrase. She told me Project Hollow Bend wasn't a unit you could find in military rosters. It was the kind of operation that lived in footnotes and redacted pages. Designed for internal disciplinary actions during the last years of the war. Soldiers who knew too much, civilians who asked the wrong questions. Daniel hadn't just seen something. He'd been used. Reedgrass wasn't about extraction or even cleanup. It was about erasing evidence. And Daniel had refused to erase it. That's why they offered him the deal. Silence or disappear. And when he agreed to disappear, he left us behind. But he didn't forget us. Morgan found a final envelope tucked into the back of the last notebook, still sealed, addressed to me. She handed it over without a word. I stared at my own name written in the same ink, same hand, across 50 years of distance. My throat tightened as I slid my finger under the flap. Inside was a single sheet. No salutation. Just, "I think about the porch, the way the screen door slammed behind you. I remember you asking why I had to leave. I told you it was a job. I didn't know then that the job would never let me go. If you're reading this, I'm gone. But you made it. That means something. Thank you for not forgetting me. Danny." I didn't cry. I just sat there with the paper in my lap, feeling the weight of 50 years collapse all at once. Morgan reached over and squeezed my hand. "We can publish," she said. "Even if it's partial, even if we have to change names." But I shook my head. "Not yet," I said. "Let him rest." She nodded. Before she left, she scanned everything, not to publish, not yet, but to protect it. "If anything happens," she said, "this won't be lost again." A week later, I received one last envelope. No stamp, no postmark, just like the others. Inside, a single sentence. He told the truth. And so did you. No name, no signature. But I knew whose handwriting it was. Daniel Harper died a long time ago. But only now, truly, has he come home. And me? I'm still here, tending the mailbox, waiting for letters that might never come, but ready, just in case they do. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you enjoyed the story, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.